I remember sensing how this reality is like a frequency band that we are tuned into collectively, like to just be here in this reality where we're, tuning into the material and all that stuff. This is just a frequency band, like a radio station. And we can be on this radio station, but we can just as easily not be on this radio station.
Today, I'd like to welcome back to the show, Karen McMullen. Karen, welcome back. It's such an honor to have you here.
I love hanging out with you. This is amazing. So thank you so much.
Yes, I love hanging out with you too. And we had so much fun on our last interview where we talked all about human design. And during that interview, we did touch just a little bit on the experience you had, your near-death experience. So I'm really excited because I've been so curious about this since the last time we talked. I'm really excited to dive in to learning about your near-death experience. So with that being said, I'm just going to hand it over to you and feel free to share whatever you want around your near-death experience.
Oh, yeah, this is a story that I don't usually talk about. So I feel I just want to say that there's some, I'm like, my palms are sweaty. And I mean, I spend my whole career talking online about things. So it doesn't usually happen that I get nervous. But I do feel some nervousness about this. And I think there's a lot of layers to this story. So I'm going to speak it from probably the points that I feel are just really pertinent to it, because I think there's pieces that maybe people will resonate with along the way. And so I feel like the story that I'm sharing has to do, if we go back, it has to do with my whole life, where I came into this world with a lot of gifts of sensitivity to energy and also depths of emotion. And that was not really supported so much in my environment, because the people around me, they weren't masters in emotional depth and energy. Like, that just wasn't the conversation, right? So I came in, so I came into this world with gifts that were basically gaslighted my whole life and not supported. And so I can remember being 14 and wanting to commit suicide, but not having the kind of courage to go through with the logistics of it. I think that was like, logistically, when you do actually start thinking about killing yourself, it gets a little bit complicated. And you realize that it's not that easy to do. And that there's a lot of consequences. And so then so then I just, okay, well, I'm not going to commit suicide. I mean, but there was, I think, a low level feeling throughout my life of just not really wanting to be here and not wanting to live, not wanting to be in this realm, sort of just resistance in general to being a human on this planet in this sort of existence. So I'd say that's the backdrop of the story. And, I went on and I adapted to life. And at the time that this happened, I was living in Mexico, in central Mexico. I'm Canadian originally. And I was doing pretty well in terms of, I had a coaching business where I was working with a few clients. I had just channeled a book. So I was using my spiritual gifts, and I was opening up more and more to the unseen realms and my ability to communicate directly with God and to understand my energetic gifts. So that was all really opening up and coming online for me. And I had a boyfriend at the time that was working with mushrooms as a shaman. So he would take people on journeys where they would work with mushrooms for healing purposes. So I hadn't worked with mushrooms. And I want to say something before we go there, actually. It's hard to remember all the sequence of events that took place in what order, because again, I don't talk about this very much, but one of the pertinent details is that I had a woman friend who was in her 60s, and I thought of her as like a wise woman. And she had told me this story where when she was a young mother, she had this low moment in her life where she wanted to commit suicide, and she was a single mom. She only had $50 to her name, and she had an excruciating toothache. And so she only had this $50, and she went to the dentist, and they said, okay, that'll be $50 for us to extract this tooth. And so she had no means of buying food for her kids. And she used her last $50 to get her tooth extracted. Mm-hmm. And she was just thinking about giving it all up. And her father had committed suicide when she was a child. So when she got her tooth extracted, what happened was they had put her on that whatever anesthetic gas they do. Mm-hmm. And she had an NDE. So she traveled to this kind of choice point where she realized like she had one angel was taking her by her hands and one was at her feet, and she was being taken to this place where they kind of process you. And she realized what was happening. And in that moment, with her free will, she said, no, like I can't do this to my kids. I know what it's like to have your parent give up and leave. And so she, with 100% of her choice, like her free will, said, no, this won't be my destiny. This won't be the destiny of my children. But prior to that moment, she wasn't 100% in her free will of choosing this reality, right? Mm-hmm. So that moment really marked a shift for her. And when she went to go get processed, they were like, well, basically, if you want to go back, you can, but you have to give a message to the anesthesiologist or like the assistant person. She's like, sure, whatever, I'll give them a message. That's fine. Just send me back. so she got sent back. But it was a really interesting thing because this story, what it taught me, and I hope I'm conveying the meaning of it fully, was that there can come a point where if you don't 100% choose this realm, that the option to be here gets taken from you.
Yeah.
And so that was a really powerful story, and it came in useful in my story. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing how we get these things and we don't even know why. Like she didn't know why she was telling me that story, but it became very important when I had my experience. So basically I was just hanging out with his boyfriend one evening, and he asked me if I wanted to have some mushrooms. And I said yes. But before, when I had had mushrooms, I had not felt anything. So I said, can I have enough that I'll actually have some kind of an experience? Little did he know how sensitive I am. So yeah, he gave me a lot of mushrooms. I mean way more than I needed, because what ensued was wild. But So basically, I mean, there's an element of this story that is about having an experience with mushrooms, but both he and I will agree that I was leaving this realm. So there's a few aspects of that experience. So at one of the interesting things as we were setting up the experience was that we actually saw a scorpion. And it was just like right there where we were going to be, like on the living room floor.
Yeah.
And yes, scorpions are symbols of life and death. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
um,
I live in Phoenix and we see scorpions often, and there's always an aspect of death and rebirth and transformation whenever there's, we call them sightings.
right. How is this story resonating so far? I want to just check in.
Yeah, it's actually so far, I'm just really flowing with you. It's really powerful. And I have a lot to say, but I want to get through your story. But the 100% choosing to be here, I think that's so important to share. And like you, when I was 14, I wanted to leave the world as well. I mean, there's been times since then that I've wanted to leave the world. And the more interviews I do, the more people I work with in coaching, it's very common that we've all had this like desire to exit. And yet we chose to be here. Our souls lined up to have this experience. And so it's just making total sense. And I'm just so into your story right now.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I think that is really, I mean, if anyone has to stop listening, that's really, I feel like the biggest point of this story is that one piece. So I'm glad you're also receiving that fully and in alignment that aligns with other things that you've heard and seen. Yeah, okay. So uh one of the first things that happened was I remember I was standing and I was trying to connect with my body and with my soul. So I consider the soul to be like Karen, my thoughts, my emotions, my past, my human design, my auric information, my free will. And I was standing there and I was trying to connect with those things and they weren't there. Like Karen was no longer there. I wasn't Karen anymore. So the presence of how it feels to be me as Karen was gone. And so it was incredibly disturbing. And I remember feeling and thinking, I was like, what? Where did she go? Like, that was a good character. Like, I
Interesting.
want to be that one. She was a good character. She was cool. Like, I like what she was doing in life. She had really, like, it felt good to be Karen when the absence of Karen was perceived.
Now, I have a question here because, like, was this more because you weren't attached to your body, or was there other maybe things alive that made you not attached to this character?
I mean, I really have no idea how to understand this story, honestly. Um,
Okay, that's
I think
perfect too.
maybe if the listeners want to make sense of it in the comments, that'll be interesting. But how I make sense of it is that I became just pure awareness without the self. So there was no self present, but without the self, there was really like what I sensed was a more like detached, neutral, not warm. It wasn't like the presence of pure love or anything. It was just neutral. So I missed Karen And it was freaky. And basically what I learned from that moment, like this is just sort of an aside lesson, but what I learned from that moment was like, this is such an honor to get to be Karen. Like, I get to be this avatar, like this person that has the curly hair and that has the, tall, slim body and likes to dance and all the things that make up my personality and my selfhood. I actually really understood actual self-love in that moment. It's like actual self-love is just like, oh, I really like my avatar. I want to play this role fully. I get to be this one just one time.
Mhm.
So that was really cool experience. I was very grateful when Karen returned.
Now, okay, so you mentioned that, when you were younger, you wanted to, you had a hard time um, being in this world, being sensitive and not really having support around that. Um, and that was earlier on. I'm curious, were you experiencing any of that before you had this experience where you were like, wait, I really love
Oh,
Karen?
oh yeah, for sure. All the time. It wasn't even something that uh, I even knew was my experience. I just always felt like often I'd wake up and I'd just be like, oh, here I am again. Here I am on this plane. Um, and I struggled with low self-esteem my entire life. I struggled with just this low level feeling of not wanting to be here. And I can't remember the sequence of events, but I did have a session with a healer around that time who tuned into me. He was a channel, he was like an interpreter of energy. And the first thing he said to me when he tuned in to my energy field was, I can tell you that even though you actually have created a pretty happy life for yourself in terms of all the things that you're up to and what you're doing, that you still don't truly really want to be here. And that really hit me because it felt so true. And it made me aware of how that underlying feeling, it was so present, but I wouldn't ever have said it because I just felt like that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the energy. That's like the frequency that I was embodying going into this experience. And so then as far as being able to stand and be so aware, that left. I kind of just, I was in another state. I mean, I was on the floor and I remember sensing how this reality is like a frequency band that we are tuned into collectively, like to just be here in this reality where we're, tuning into the material and all that stuff. This is just a frequency band, like a radio station. And we can be on this radio station, but we can just as easily not be on this radio station.
Right.
And so, it seems difficult for us to die, but actually it's very, very, very easy. And it's like a flip of a switch, like you're on a different frequency band
Yeah.
and you're
Yeah.
not in this reality anymore. So I remember that awareness. And then basically I was lying there and I was um, not really breathing very much. So to me, it was like my consciousness was leaving my body. And I was in a dark place. It wasn't like I went into a place of light. It was a dark place. I don't know where I was, but it was, um, I wasn't me anymore. And I was not really in this realm, and I was having a trouble like actually getting back to this realm. And while I was going, like the boyfriend was like doing everything he could to get me to come back. He was like, I couldn't breathe normally. I couldn't just like take in a breath and exhale. Like I wasn't breathing. So he was just like saying, Karen, like breathe in. Come on, you can do it. Breathe in. Breathe out. Come on, Karen. Like I don't know how long he was doing that for, like some hours.
Were you aware of him doing this when you were having your
there were moments I was aware of him.
Okay.
But even if he was telling me to breathe in, I couldn't do it.
Right.
Because I wasn't like connected with my body.
Yeah.
So and he would say things like, I remember him saying to me, like, Karen, you have so many people who love you. Like, please come back. Like, come here. Like, be here in this realm. Come on, you can do it. Breathe. That was all he was focusing on, was breathing. And it was somewhere in that experience that I had that awareness of like the story that my friend had told me about leaving this realm and then choosing to come back. And so somehow like I made that connection of like, okay, I'm actually leaving because I can't breathe. I can't make my body breathe. So like if I don't do something, I'm not going to be here. Like I'm actually going to go. So at that time, it was like, oh, wow, I'm getting the thing I wanted. I'm getting the chance to leave if I want. And to actually choose to be here was a very powerful thing. 100% choice, because you know, if you're living with an 80% desire to be here, overcoming that 20% is pretty significant.
Yeah.
And so you know, like you can say, okay, yeah, I want to be here 100%, but that's not 100% unless you actually get yourself to 100%.
Yeah.
So, like 100% is 100%. It's not something you can fake when you're having a conversation with God or like when you're like dying, you know?
Right. I really felt that when you said that you became aware of the moment where you were getting what you wanted, which was to leave. And yet that really wasn't what you wanted. Because you did want to be here, and that was so powerful. Just the energy coming from you, like I felt like I was almost there with you in that choice point of fully choosing. And I have some questions, but I want you to finish your story.
Yeah, no, go ahead and
I'm
ask your
sitting here
question.
with this burning question, like, okay, how do we 100% choose to be here without having a near death experience? How do we do that?
Yeah. Well, if you figure that out, I feel like you should write the book. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess the thing is when you have like more acute experiences where you're just really presented with the actual reality of the choice. I mean, we all really do have this choice on a daily basis, but when you're sort of pushed to that place, I think it just becomes so poignant. But now that I know what I know now, I do believe that we can exercise our free will, and we should exercise our free will every day. That's really a big, huge aspect of what it means to be here, is that we get to choose whether or not we feel connected with God. We get to choose what we focus on. Like, this realm is about us having free will and choice to separate and feel victimized by life. That's our choice, but we can also choose that we want to know like our divine nature, that we want to live our gifts, that we can make those choices. So I think everyone can exercise their free will. And even if your choice to do so is like, hey, I have no idea how to get to 100% wanting to be here, but I choose that that's what I want.
Yeah.
And, I'm willing to go on the journey to actually getting there, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's a journey.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking as you were talking about the choices, I was having this visual of we even get to choose. Like sometimes it doesn't feel like a choice, but we choose the thoughts that we want to listen to or the thoughts that we think. And then it clicked for me, and I was like, maybe it's just a willingness. Like maybe it's
Absolutely.
just a
Yes.
willing to be willing or
Yes.
willing to be willing to be willing.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I think you were saying like you chose. You realized that you were getting what you wanted, but then that actually to exit was not actually what you wanted because you were really in tune with what it meant or what it means to love yourself. Like you love this avatar of Karen that you chose. So, did you start
Yeah.
leaving? How did that work? How did it unfold?
Well, the sense that I had was like whatever realm I was being taken to, it was happening. Like it was going on. Like I was leaving. The momentum was in the direction of not being here. So it's like if you're in a rushing river and it's taking you one way, to get back that way, you actually have to fight. Like you have to, that's why it couldn't be like a lukewarm, oh yeah, no, I really want to be there. It was actually like a fight. Like I want to be there so much I'm willing to fight to be there with all of my power. And so that's the shift that occurred in that moment because the momentum was the other way. So um, so yeah, I did make that shift and make that choice to fight that I wanted to be here. And also somewhere in that whole experience was the knowing, I guess, that leaving at this point, I was leaving so much work undone. Like so many things that I hadn't lived, so many things that I hadn't done that were a part of why I came here that I had not fulfilled. So that it was like a real shame to leave at this moment when there was so much more that I had inside to actually do in that life. I had just finished writing my book. I hadn't even started my YouTube channel at that point. So I was living a very different reality than I am 4 years later. So, um, so anyway, basically what happened after that was the boyfriend took a giant crystal and he put it on my womb, a giant crystal, like he was a crystal collector. And that brought all of my consciousness back into my body. And I started screaming like I was being murdered. Like the most horrific screams you've ever heard in your life. And I could not stop them. I grabbed a pillow and just put it over my mouth because I was like, oh my God, I can't stop this screaming. And we're going to get like the police are going to think you're murdering me. But what was happening in that moment was I was feeling all of the terror of every woman that has been raped, has been murdered, like has had these horrific experiences at the hands of abusers over centuries, without being heard, without anyone intervening, no one coming to help her. Like all the unheard voices, all the horrific experiences, those came to me in that moment. And I
You
was
know what
giving voice.
crystal it was? Do
I
you know
have
what?
no idea. I have no idea.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that was like a burning curiosity. Like, whoa, that's pretty powerful.
I can't remember. I can't remember which one it was.
But it
I'm
was on
sure
your.
I'm sure he told me afterwards, but I can't remember at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was wild to just have all those voices coming through my throat. Like I could not stop screaming. And then from there, it was just like a process of my consciousness entering my body again, but I really didn't have any control over my body. And that went on for a while. So that's the essence of that experience
Yeah.
that I had.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just feel honored and grateful because I know you mentioned that you felt nervous and it was hard for you. So I'm just really, really grateful. And there's just so much, I don't even know the word. There's so many nuggets in your story about the the choosing 100% to be here is, I think, so impactful. It's been my experience where I have not wanted to, or I do have kids, so I can relate to the woman who had her dental work done of not wanting to leave. uh, but I can have times where it's very, very hard to be here in this reality, and where I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to be human, right? And so I think that's super impactful. But I really love, and I'd love for you to say more about the self-love and how you could see this avatar of Karen that you chose, and you were like, wait, she's a cool character. I want to play her out. Can we go there for a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, in the integration following from that experience, it was amazing because, I had been on a spiritual path for many years prior to that experience, which was all about letting go of the separate self and the ego and merging with the divine. And, that was where I had this ability to channel because I was able to soften my separate self enough that I became a vehicle for God to speak through me. But there was an element of that, and I see this with my beautiful spiritual friends and people that I meet through my YouTube channel, where they get so used to like allowing the self to be secondary and allowing God to be primary, that they forget that they get to be this unique self. Mm-hmm. And that it's not egoic to fully shine as yourself and let yourself really be that one that loves whatever it is that you love. Like that's the point of all of this. Yeah. It's that we get to experience being who we are. Yeah. So yeah, like looking in the mirror and like getting into makeup and like if you watch some of my stories on Instagram, you'll see me like taking selfies of like how hot I look in my little dress before I go out dancing. That's all like celebration of just getting to be me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's certain perks that go along with it. Like
Yeah.
my character is naturally warm and charismatic. Like people like me. That's fun. I get to enjoy those kinds of weird interactions I have because of my personality. Not everybody has a personality like that, but
Yeah.
that's just who I am. So yeah, that has been really joyful. And I, you know, like that's some of the work that I love doing in my career now, is helping people to be in their zone of genius, to fully express their self through their brand. I mean, like, look at you, you're so beautiful. Like, milk that, you know, like do the brand photo shoots, look gorgeous. You know, there's a reason you look the way you look.
Mm-hmm.
Not that everybody needs to be like physically beautiful. Sometimes, according to like the standards of society, like sometimes people get specific vehicles for certain reasons, right?
Yeah.
Very specific vehicles. That's all a part of your avatar. So just whatever you've got, that's your thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I've really enjoyed it a lot. And there's something else I really want to say from this story that actually just came into clarity this summer, like very recently. And I just need to speak it with respect because I don't know what would want to be shared or not from in terms of my family. But basically, I got some information this summer that showed me that these themes that I was living with, of wanting to commit suicide, of not wanting to be here, of having low self-esteem, these weren't even things that were mine. They were actually whole family lineage. It's like in my family lineage, there were doors opened in the psyche, in the self, to let in these specific distortions. So that's the way I look at it. It's like there's a divine blueprint. The divine blueprint does not include suicide. Like, we're not intended to come here and not want to be here. We're not intended to come here and suffer. So when that's present in your thoughts and emotions, that means there's a distortion, a distorted filter of the self that you're living with. So that distorted filter was something that I came into this world with. Like, it was a part of my family lineage. So it's not even something I had control over having. It was just present. It was something I was given.
Yeah.
So, you know, when I discovered from my family and like really heard the family members sharing this, it just became so obvious to me that this was so much something that I was in my whole energetic makeup, that it wasn't like something I did wrong. Like, I couldn't have escaped having low self-esteem. I couldn't have been a person that wanted to live. Like, it was something I was given. So I had to clear that up and dispel those distortions and say no to them and fight them and like release them from my field and make another choice with my free will to close the door to that distortion and not allow that to be a part of my reality.
Yeah. I love all of this conversation. I can completely relate to what you're saying around my experience of addiction and alcoholism. Like, there was no way I was not going to experience that. But like, I got to, make a choice almost 16 years ago with the eating disorder and over 10 years now with alcohol and drugs. And, you know, that was all part, it was all part of this. And I want to jump back a little bit because I think it's so important. And this is why I really honed in on this self-love piece is that, and I don't really know how exactly you mentioned it, but you were talking about like the the way I interpret it is like the spiritual self and then this human self. And I think so often, you know, we hear things like, oh, we're spirits having a human experience, and we're, you know, everything's perfect because, you know, our soul is perfect. And yet we are in this reality, like we are in this world, and we do have bodies, and we do have gifts specific to this character and this avatar and the way we look and the way we talk and what we're just naturally interested in. And that's where I guide my clients, and that's why I'm so passionate about teaching people to authentically be who they are and relate, because we are meant to be who we are. And it's just so beautiful. And I just wanted to recap and highlight all of those things because this conversation, yeah, I just love hanging out with you, Karen. I love your avatar too.
Thank you. Yeah. And then the other piece of that self-love part is like, love yourself enough to really validate your own gifts. Like, you know, at the time that I had that experience, part of the despair was I had energetic gifts that I hadn't really learned fully how to use. I had written a book that I hadn't distributed into the world. I had a lot of abilities that were underutilized. So when you're underutilized, you feel rejected by life. You feel like, oh, well, I'm not really wanted here. Like, what's the point of my existence? I'm not needed. I'm not wanted. I'm not appreciated. And I'm not valued. But you have to first value yourself and appreciate yourself and validate yourself. So what in that whole period and really since then, like, first of all, I fully claimed the identity as an energy transmitter and a frequency communicator. And I think a lot of people that have these sort of feelings like they don't want to live are very energetically sensitive. And until they own that and really learn how to use those gifts plague them and make their life difficult. So learning
I
how to
agree
map.
100%. I think almost all the listeners out there are nodding their heads like, experience too.
Yeah. So learning that to own those gifts and master them, like, it made my life so much better because now I had a new identity. I was like, oh yeah, I am here as an emissary of light. I'm a light work. I'm a healer. And that's why I don't like going to the grocery store. That's why I've struggled to just do basic things in life. And now, instead of feeling victimized by that, I'm actually going to learn how to master that and, you know, use it with clients, use it in my work, get paid for it, use that light to frequency the world through my YouTube channel and through my books. And, you know, like, study how to market and sell things that transform people's lives. And, you know, now, like, because I've validated my own self, because I love and appreciate my avatar, you know, I have a YouTube channel with 15,000 followers, and I have a business where people buy sessions with me, and I actually just won a Hay House publishing competition of 152 people to get my second book published. So
Wow, congratulations. That's awesome.
yeah. So, like, I'm here to be a writer. That's my avatar. I'm here to be, you know, an emissary of light. That's
Mhm.
who I get to be. And part of the heaviness of that time was I wasn't being my avatar.
Yeah. I can fully relate with my journey, and I would still say that I haven't fully embraced my avatar 100%, but that's the willingness, right? Like always like, that's the journey. You know, what else was I what else does Christina have in store for this
Yes,
life?
exactly. I
Yeah.
think that's true for all of us because we're becoming
Mhm.
more and more of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, I'm so honored. This conversation has just been just as lovely as the last one. And so I'm curious though, before we close, if there's anything else that was left unsaid or that you want to add or that's coming alive right now into this moment to share with the world.
Yeah, I feel from my heart, I just want to say if there's any parts of this story that I shared that like resonate for you as a listener as truth, then just take it. You don't have to go through some dramatic experience to get the lessons that I got. You know, you can just be like, oh, yeah, that's for me. I choose that. That's a key for me. I choose that. I take it. I integrate it. I'm making this my truth. I'm an emissary of light. I'm going to share my work in the world. I'm going to validate myself. Like whatever piece of the story resonated, like just take it. You can do that when you receive codes from people. That's part of frequency and energy work. How it works is like you see the code, you say, I choose that, and you use your free will to just decide that that's your new reality. You don't have to go through some crazy experience. I don't wish that experience for you, and maybe don't take mushrooms. That's another suggestion. I don't I don't recommend plant medicine. Like I don't think it's the safest method to have these awarenesses um because we don't need that. Like I think maybe, you know, there's certain places on your journey, like it was a part of my journey, but it's not something I'm recommending to people going forward because I know that you can have incredible connections, incredible awarenesses from God directly without having to go through the risk factor of opening your energy field to darkness and have opening doors and windows to distortions that you can't control. So I don't recommend putting yourself in that vulnerable state. Um, yeah, unless you just know it's part of your calling. But yeah, that's I guess another disclaimer I would say at the end here.
I love that. As a sober woman, I love that disclaimer. There are many, many, many other ways to access the divine and the connection to the divine and the truth without having to alter our physical reality. And
Yes.
I just want to say that, yes, it is possible. My wish for everyone too is to learn viscerally through my experiences. So it is possible to take what resonates and learn it without having to suffer.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Karen, this has been so much fun. How do people get a hold of you if they want to work with you?
Well, you can find my YouTube channel, Karen McMullen, and my name is KarenMcMullen. So that's my YouTube, and then my website is the same, KarenMcMullen.ca, if you want to book a reading. And yeah, you can find me on Instagram that way. So whatever your platform is. I also have a podcast, so any of those things you can find me.
All right. I'll be sure to include all of that in the description of this show. And also, I'll include the link to our first conversation in the description of this show as well. So if you want to learn about human design, go ahead and check out that conversation. It was just as fun as this one. So thank you. Thank you so much, Karen, for sharing your story. I'm honored, I'm grateful, and I'm just so happy to know you and be a part of your group. So
thank you. Thank you so much. What a blessing.
I would like to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss a beat. And if you really resonated with this content, please share it with all of your friends so that collectively we can expand our consciousness. Have a very blessed week.